Have you ever thought about shooting a compound bow before? They're really good in survival situations. In hunting situations, they are the more effective choice between them and crossbows. They can also be fun by going to shooting ranges with them, and you can also go to target shooting ranges too. Learning how to shoot a compound bow is not hard and can be a fun hobby to pick up. In 1966, Hollis Alexander Jr. invented the first patent for the compound bow. What I like about the compound bow is for the size of it, it's the most powerful thing to use. You can set the power of your arrow by poundage. What poundage is the amount of weight it takes to pull your string back with the bow. Mine is currently at 70, which is the max I can do for my bow because it's kind of old. Newer bows can go up to 80 pounds, and there's actually some bows that can go up to 100 pounds. That's for like bigger animals. The only negative I have to say about compound bows is they require a little more maintenance since they're more a little complex than crossbows. My bow is a Matthews Mission Riot. I've had since I was 13 years old, and I highly recommend this bow for anyone that wants to start or for children. You can set the weight all the way down to 40 pounds. Like I said earlier, mine's set at 70. And then with releases, I have the normal finger release, and there's also a thumb release. Thumb releases are a little bit more expensive. I've always wanted to try it, but I never got to. But the tactical hunting, they say that it's a little bit more better with anchorage and a little bit better with consistency. With your arrows, you want carbon fiber arrows. They are more accurate than wood, and with that, you want to make sure that they are not too short. If they're too short, they might fall off of your bow. For my bow, my arrow holder, I have a whiskey biscuit. That's what keeps the arrow in place. And you want to make sure that your arrows are not too long. If your arrows are too long, they will dip down and not be as accurate if they're regular length. For hunting situations, you're going to want to use suppressors on your bow, rubber suppressors. I used to have some, but I took them off and you put them back on. What they do is they take away the vibration of the bow. They also, with that, takes away the recoil and it makes it more accurate. What you can also do with your bows is put stabilizers on them. My stabilizer is a little guy right here. What that does is also takes away more of the vibrations also and balances your bow out a little bit. People in the Olympics have very long stabilizers. So the next big concept I want to go over is stance. Tactical Hunting on YouTube said with your stance you want to make like a T shape. So you want to go, and when you pull your bow back, you want the shape like this. You want your feet shoulder width apart and like this, like the angle of a T. Once you get that down, it's a proper stance. When you draw your bow back, you never want to lock your knees or have them too bent, because when you're too bent, you're wobbly. When you're locked, it's not good. So you just want to make sure your feet shoulder width apart, balanced, and relaxed legs, and with that. After that, the next part I want to talk about is placement with the string. I have a thing on my bow, it's called a kisser. The kisser is this little orange thing right here. What that does is you want the string, to be lined up perfectly, the middle of your nose, and the string on your lip. What that kisser does is when I pull the bow back, it lines up perfectly with the string in my mouth, with the kisser. Another thing to help you out when pulling back your bow is you want to start at the top, and when you start at the top, bring it down. What that does is it makes it easier to draw that bow back, and it saves your back. With properly placing an arrow onto your bow, you want to grab an arrow out of your arrow holder, and you know it'll be properly on your bow when you hear this clicking sound of the arrow onto the string like this. Once that's on, you know the arrow is properly on. While aiming, there are different types of scopes, and there's plenty of them. They're like 3-line scopes, 5-line scopes, 7-line scopes. My bow has a 5-line scope, and what the lines represent are the yardage. So, like for example, anything between 0 and 20 yards would be the first line you'd use for the target. The second would be 25. The third line would be 30 yards. The fourth line would be 35 yards, and the fifth line would be 40 yards. I never shoot more than 30 yards. You want to make sure that you're confident with your shot, because if you're not confident with your shot and you're flinging an arrow, you don't want to hurt an animal. You make sure it's a good shot. So I suggest to you just to make sure to stick in your confident range. Now when you shoot, you pull your bow back, like I talked about earlier, make sure your stance is good, feet balanced. Go ahead and grab the arrow like this. You want to take the release right here and clip it onto this bowstring right here. Once you do that, talked about earlier, taking that bow up like this, then get the line targeted up, and you want to slowly squeeze the release trigger, like so. What many hunters struggle with is not releasing that trigger lightly. They jerk it. And many hunters struggle with that, including myself. Other than that, that's how you shoot a bow. Now before I end this speech, I just want to go over the don'ts. When season's over, you don't want to not shoot your bow until the next season starts. Doing so, it will make you really rusty. Also, when you're aiming, you only want to aim at the target and nothing else. That could lead to serious injury or even death. Never, and I mean never, dry fire your bow. Dry firing your bow could potentially destroy your whole bow and the particles of the string to get on you. What a dry fire is shooting your bow without an arrow. You never, when you're drawing your bow back, you never want to have your finger on the trigger. You want to make sure that your finger is behind the trigger, and when you pull the bow back, that's when you put the finger on the trigger. Also, you never want to shoot a cracked arrow. You can tell an arrow is cracked when you bend it and fibers pop out, so just be careful of that. After learning all this, that's how you be safe with the bow. In conclusion, we have learned that shooting a compound bow is not that hard. After this, you should be able to shoot a compound bow safely and properly. We have learned that shooting a compound bow is not hard and that it can be a fun hobby. Get to shooting, folks.